Good evening. So I missed meditation. Was the marimba band going? Yeah, excellent. So thank you everyone for doing the homework. And I sort of apologize. I was kind of hounding people to the last minute about getting it in, and had this great activity in my mind for what we were going to do tonight with that. And then it ended up being a 5-page document, and it was like, no, that's not going to happen. So if you haven't done it and you still feel inspired, feel free to send it to me, and I'll send that out in the next few days. But how was it? How was it putting those things down into words for people? I know some people felt really clear and just rolled in. Some people were like, I'm not quite sure what's going on here, but charged ahead nevertheless. Yeah, good. I'm excited for everyone to read it. It's really nice. One reason I wanted to have us all read it tonight, actually silently, was it's hard for me to make the time to really settle with that kind of thing. It's kind of like, okay, what's this person's credentials? Do I really want to pour my settled time into this? But I really recommend making 15, 20 minutes to sit down and accept what people have to share, to cultivate that space. I think you'll be surprised at what can filter into your being if you really make that time. And then did anyone do the reading I offered from Norman Fisher's book? I actually said in the email that I would read this, but I did not. I did not do some of the homework. So, did anyone read it? Just out of curiosity, and do you guys have any reflections? Anything to share with us about how was it?
You can't understand. If you captured it, you don't have, you're already off the mark, I believe was my takeaway.
Oh.
I loved how he touched so much on what you were talking about with the lack of firmness of words and how they just point to a thing. The more you look at what they point to or what they are, the less substantial the word is, and you kind of lose what the word means, but at the same time it means all of what it's supposed to, because it's just a pointer. And I don't know, I felt like that was a really interesting tie between from what you were talking about last week.
How to avoid the rabbit hole?
Well, yeah, but that's what wisdom is. It's the rabbit hole.
Anyone else? Some more hands over there. Jay, Sophia, did you guys have your hands up showing? Nodding? Yeah, good. He's also a poet, too. So that's part of, I think he had a lot of fun talking about that. That's both his limitation and his gate at the same time as a wordsmith. Yeah, good. So I'll email out that document to everyone soon with the kind of follow-up email I usually do. And tonight we are gonna start with another writing activity. I really liked that last time. Felt like it got me flowing. And then actually just doing something silently in a room that wasn't just meditation with people felt kind of invigorating to me in a funny way. So if you have something to write with, you can bring it out. Otherwise there's lots of paper and pencils right here, which I assume some people will need. Can someone else do this? Thank you. And while you're doing that, I will talk about what we will write about as the prompt. You're going to write about meditation and wisdom. So many of you actually wrote about meditation as kind of moving into wisdom, or wisdom expressing itself through meditation in this homework that we just did. So if you did that, please bear with us and go again, try a different tack, go a different route. Otherwise, if you didn't do that, kind of a fresh exploration. And all of us have different ways we're holding, everything in life, but maybe particularly meditation. I'm sitting here every day. Some people might just be dabbling or pressing a foot into that or trying 3 breaths every now and again. But wisdom is really, in Buddhist schools, one of the main focuses of all Buddhist schools is this thing, meditation. In our school, it's Zazen. Other schools have different names for their meditations, different styles. The list is endless for ways to talk about this. And how is it for you? And how is that related to this wisdom we've been talking about? This embodiment of total ungraspability that on one hand, if you try and approach it or think you have it at all, you're way off the mark. But also there's something sharpening and opening as we come to know the complete ungraspability of the world, our inability to fully know a thing or know someone coming in front of us. And there's something, oh, I have one, but oh, great, thank you. But there's something as we become closer to that, something opens for us, right? Something that's not, I can lock down the world, but I can meet it with a particular kind of grace or beauty or skill. Skillful means in Buddhism is the word that points to that, the ability with, or someone who has cultivated wisdom, they can meet living beings in a particular way that unfolds harmony and beauty in the world and reduces suffering. So that's a lot of words. How does that all land for you? And just take some time to get open that valve and let the waters flow a bit. And so I think probably let's go 7 minutes on that. So you can take some time and just even sit, take a few breaths if you'd like. So whatever you need to do to unfold this discussion. formulate a question you have about meditation and wisdom, or even just one of those is fine, the connection between them is fine. And then the other thing is to find a statement, to make a statement about meditation and or wisdom, and or their connection. So, question about really anything you've written, and a statement. And really both about just one sentence, not more than a sentence. It can be less than a sentence. We'll have another couple minutes, kind of seeing when people finish up, so no need to feel too rushed. And we will share these with the group, disclaimer. finishing up. And it feels like immense dissatisfaction to be a part of this game for probably everyone. We can share that together. And so I'd like for us to share these questions and statements. And maybe just for simplicity's sake, we'll have someone start and then we'll just go around clockwise in the room. So when someone feels ready, they can just start speaking and seal the fate of everyone else.
Alright.
Actually, wait, I want to pause that. Since Holly's still writing a bit, we'll have Milo start first. Do you want to take some... Oh.
Would you still like me to go?
I don't know. Yes, or I think you guys can work it out.
You have the floor, my friend.
Oh, are you sure?
Well, I guess you'll have to twist my arm a little.
Up to you.
Oh, there you go.
No, the whole circle. Alright, I'll go. Here we go. So, I guess my question, I wrote about meditating.
Maybe I want to give one more statement. Sorry, I didn't say this beforehand. We'll kind of settle into kind of a meditative space. That's really where we're receiving everyone's words.
Mm-hmm.
And so on the person who's speaking, like not very much talking about it, and the energy can be kind of like settled and slow, and yeah, just without any preamble or wrapping up afterwards, you can just read your sentence. And then also, it's good if the person going afterwards, lets it land a little bit, so we don't like rip through like wildfire, but we make these like offerings and people receive them, and then when the next person feels like it's landed for a little bit, then the next person can speak. And maybe further, after we go around once, we'll start with our questions, let's say, and then Onur, you can start right in with your statements.
So question first and then statement.
Yeah.
So we're going twice.
We're going twice,
Okay.
which also means Joichi will go, and then let's say Amanda, you'll go, and then Mandy, you will go after that. So that will be the order. Amanda, then Mandy, and then you'll start in with the statements. And then we'll continue around again. Does that make sense? Is that clear?
That's a deep. Alright.
Okay, Joichi?
Yeah. Why is it so hard to convince others who would benefit to try meditation?
Who am I?
Is my meditation always premeditated?
What is wisdom without meditation?
How can we enact right practice without enacting a gaining mind?
How expansive and unified is awareness encountered in meditation and life?
How do you follow but not heed?
Grasping and understanding. What will knowing feel like?
Wherein does one realize stillness?
Where is the turning point where my heart can trust each thing?
Why do people make meditation so hard when really it's just a matter of finding a moment to be with yourself and to look deeper?
Do I collect the ins and the thes, discard them, or not?
Am I willing to swim deeper?
Why do I struggle so deeply coming to Zazen in the morning?
What could be said?
Creating a space between thought and what we do.
How would I know if meditation is offering me to the space to find wisdom?
I have never regretted meditating.
Meditation is a gateway to understanding.
When meditation feels most profound to me, there's a sense of timelessness to it, or a sense of losing track of time.
There is no end.
Sometimes when I sit, I'm astonished by the aliveness of the world.
Meditation is a gateway to seeing what we really are.
The cloud and the sky are not two.
Identifying wonder, wondering about identity.
To realize is to live and live and live and live.
Barrier. I have not a key.
Meditation helps me realize that things come and go, that things constantly change, and that not only is that okay, but natural.
Meditation feels like waves.
Dipping cautiously into deep waters.
I cannot hope to see it. I cannot hope to know it. Maybe I can hope to be it.
Wow.
I'll read the second half of that. This will lead to wisdom.
Meditation connects me to my body, a different sort of knowing, an intuition, a feeling, an impression, an ability to sense when things aren't quite right and also when they are.
just sit for a moment. I'm really grateful for Sangha. So now we can hand out the papers. Thank you. And then people on the computer screen in front of me, you should have received an email like 10 minutes before class started with this document. And it's the second page of what I sent you. The one with a big long quote on it by James Hillman, starting with how do ethical considerations. Do we have enough? We got one? So I'd like to read this together. I'll read it out loud, and we'll talk about it a little bit. Nursing and sitting with it, dwelling upon it, tracing the invisible mystery of it, letting compassion come for your own chronic disorder. This all slows down your progress, moves you from future thinking to essential thinking about our own nature and character, upon life's meaning and deaths, upon love and its failure, upon what is truly important, and upon the small things in words, manners, act, necessitated by the limitations of your inescapable disorder. We begin to hear differently, watch differently, absorb more sensitively. Confronted with the unbearable in my own nature, I show more trepidation, which is, after all, the first piece of compassion. In regard to others, my manners alter, my language more attuned and precise. I become more sophisticated and artful. As a cat steps, a bird perceives, a dog follows invisibles in the air. I look to arts for understanding, to ritual for enactments, and to the lives of men and women of the past and how they came through. I need something further than community and civilization, for they may be too human, too visible. I need imaginal help from tales and images, idols and altars, and the creatures of nature to help me carry what is so hard to carry personally and alone. So many of you who are in the ethics class, you can tell this is a recycled document from my class. I just really love this quote though, and thinking into the perfections and the play with wisdom and transformation. I think this quote does a really beautiful job of poetically teasing out some of those lines. And so I thought we have some time just for a little bit of discussion for this. Is anyone particularly caught by a line in here? Does it feel like it draws out in a different way something you've been thinking about in terms of what we've been talking about in class? The parmitas and this wisdom business.
Sure. I need imaginal help from tales and images, idols and altars, and the creatures of nature to help me carry what is so hard to carry personally and alone. That brings up a lot, or says a lot on about spirituality and faith. not being alone.
There's some, continuing with that, there's something really deeply comforting about, I'm reading a book and there's a poem in the book about like the path having the footprints of uncountable like companions and people who are walking a similar path, and how important it is for us to find some sort of community and solace and stability and help from those around us walking with us. And part of me, I think, when I encounter that thought, there's like a little bit of sadness, you know, it's because any human sangha, any community you find is always deeply human, and there's something I think really deeply like comforting and holding and beautiful about widening, how do I phrase that? Like seeing your support web as something much wider and vaster and deeper than true, the humans with you who matter and important, but also your own imagination and the tales that you tell, and like the imaginal realms that your ritual lives in, and yeah, the creatures of nature and idols and altars. Yeah, it's really beautiful, really comforting and a little saddening. Yeah.
Did anyone have the experience here at Buddha Temple being pretty freaked out by rituals and then actually finding an on-road through that? I think I'd count myself a big on-road, but I count myself in that narrative. Does anyone else have that experience?
Yeah, I mean, I first came many years ago, and I think after I came, I didn't come back for like a year or something because I was so just like overwhelmed by the ritual aspect and not understanding anything and confronting the discomfort of not knowing how to go along with things. And then when I came back, just like realized, oh, like if I stick with this and learn these, like they just become part of the practice. And so yeah, I think the word you used, on-roads, is like the perfect word. You know, it was initially something that was really like off-putting for me, but then once I was able to move into it, I like felt like it had clicked for me in some way.
I've always actually really enjoyed ritual in various parts of my religious past, but they brought me into something that once I started looking at it, I didn't really conform with, and so I felt like they were like hooks bringing me in. And so when I came here and I found similar hooks, it made me kind of distrusting at first. I was like, oh no, is it gonna happen again? But where they have been pulling me and leading me is a very different place. And I really appreciate that.
Holly, you were nodding up a storm. I'm curious if you're willing to share a bit.
I wasn't raised religious at all, but I loved going to church with my like family, like, you know, like distant relatives. Because, you know, going to like Catholic church and you get to like do the wafer and the like, and I'm like, this is great. Then like stand up and sit down a whole bunch, and I just thought it was hilarious. I loved it, like singing along to songs I didn't know, but I couldn't get behind any of it, and so. Yeah, the first time I came, I was like, this is great! And like, you know, I came twice and was just like walking around saying the Bodhisattva vow. It's like out loud. Like I just wander all around my bike around just saying the Bodhisattva vow and like doing the poly refuges, like shouting them out because I think it's like, I love it. And so I never had the like this when I was like, oh, this is, I'm gonna get behind this and they do this like this, like the smoke. They're doing things this is great. So and there's like the mental element I can get behind. So yeah, absolutely.
it seems like there's many recovering Catholics around here. I'm still a practicing one. Maybe someday I'll get it right too. But I'm still part of that. But just the whole incense and the candles, and there is that whole ritual that just it just feels it's got a certain flow to it that connects you, timelessness flow to it there.
Would anyone speak? Someone else had to be struck by the words chronic disorder. That's the one that really, yeah. Anyone want to share about that? Yeah, Dave.
That was my first thought, and specifically your own. I honed in on your own chronic disorder as almost a reference to the shattering of my own ego, thinking that they are my own, and that for a large part of my life, I thought I had a very unique chronic disorder. And as I age, I realize it's not so unique, and that's where I'm finding wisdom as I age.
Can you say more about that? Where's the shift between the uniqueness of your chronic disorder and the applicability to your chronic, or to chronic disorder with everyone?
That, like, my own chronic disorder goes actually, and then addresses the whole paragraph because I was raised a Jew in the Midwest with Eastern European parents, so there was this sense of this outsider. So that was like the top tier of outsiderness, and then all the way down to me just being a weird, artistic, ADD-addled spaz kid. It's very isolated in my own head, and then adorning this persona of the outsider even through art school, and then thinking that my problems were unique and I was unique. And that was when I was young. And I saw your own almost as like this awesome joke, you know. It's like, no, it's my own, but I've learned it's not my own is definitely my own, but it's something I also share with everybody. So, and I never made that jump when I was younger to be everybody.
Makes me think of chronic disorder. Just makes me think of dukkha, samsara. Just like everybody has same. Everybody suffers. Everybody has that cycle. So it's chronic,
And I think that in many ways, the way we've been talking about patience and what is it to stay with your chronic disorder, and how in here, I really love how it's very much, there's this kind of saying in Japanese culture, I don't know exactly how it goes, but that persimmons, I think there's a way to extract the astringency from unripe persimmons, but they don't actually become sweet. Like something happens over the drying of the persimmon and the leaving the astringent like quality in there that turns it sweet. And so there's a metaphor in there between how we meet, and if we try and get rid of that unpleasant part, the sweetness doesn't come. That the kind of transformation he's showing here isn't necessarily getting over the chronic disorder, the inescapable disorder of your mind and heart, but there is a different kind of turning that's present here, which I think feels very true for me. And
if you try to get rid of it, you're getting rid of the spice of life.
Yeah.
Like, how else can you possibly engage with things except through these channels? And then if you try to cut them off or get rid of them, all of a sudden, any form of engagement just goes away. It's a bummer. You try it. It's not fun.
Yeah, anyone else caught by a line? Feel free to grab the ball.
two of the other, well, not even lines, but the two words that jumped out at me most were inescapable and unbearable. And I find that between the two things, like, that leaves so little room, you know, like what kind of life do we have if we're confronted by inescapability and like unbearability? And so it kind of like, for me, it like gives rise to this thought, like something's gotta give, right? Like if I think the inescapability is like kind of the more like essential thing there, like the less, well, it's like less escapable. It's always going to be there. But that's when I find like ideas like impermanence to be a little bit comforting, right? Is yes, this thing is always going to be there, but it's going to come and go. And I think that like tempers the unbearability.
What if it is the coming and goingness that is unbearable?
Oh, yeah.
I know, sorry.
No, I mean sometimes it is. Sometimes it definitely is. I guess we have to like temper our relationship with the unbearable. I don't know how, but hopefully there's a way.
Well, maybe I wanted to talk a little bit more about meditation and relate them specifically to the other 6 perfections. And like we've often talked about the faces of wisdom being the other 5 perfections, you can actually kind of have some fun play with the other perfections and say, okay, how do they all manifest through this particular thing? Sorry, online folks. So first off, thinking about meditation as an act of generosity is a really interesting thing. It's right there. How could that be a gift to someone? How could that be a gift to yourself? In many ways, we can feel that quite clearly when you're running around busy, and I think we've probably, as Buddhists or Buddhist people in this room, the moment where you stop and you give up on that mind, just a little bit, just for a moment even, and surrender to some kind of turning, some kind of surrender to the idea that you can fix it by just doing one more thing, like scratch your itch by doing one more thing on your to-do list, right? And there's a line that Dogen Zenji uses that's the moment of, I think, where you really when you just decide to sit, that you're taking this small step of turning the light outward in the world, and the phrasing is to shine it back, or often also translated as to shine it inward. And usually our consciousness is just focused out there on this or that, picking and choosing, trying to create a good situation that we can see, and moving into something that doesn't play that same game. And in giving up on this solution-oriented mind, we open up a new gate. And today I had an interesting moment in a board meeting. I gave a somewhat kind of like, I don't know, I got on a soapbox a little bit and had a little emotional outburst. And everyone was trying to wrap things up, and I was like, no, I can't let this go. And I sort of like spilled out my guts. And then someone in the meeting tried to hand me a piece of paper and sort of like solution me. He was like, well, what if you do this? And then won't it be okay? And I just had to tell him, I said, I actually can't receive that right now. That's not what I'm really looking for in this space. So I'll attend to that later, but I need to let this stay here for a second. And he was like, oh, yeah. And afterwards we had a good conversation about that. And how much is that also true for our own emotional heart and life and how we hold ourselves? And that moment where we give up on being able to just solution ourselves. I think that this is this moment in turning of, say, deciding to sit down on a cushion and open up a space of reflection. And then in terms of ethical living, ethical relationships, I think this is, once you move towards that, there's a line that Ejo wrote out on a piece of paper out there. He's been taking to writing a little piece of calligraphy, and he wrote one that was, everything you touch touches back. And I really think this is the heart of ethical engagement and also a quality of mind that we can foster. And I think in this first moment of deciding to stop and think that we can affect the world as objects, as a world full of objects that we can just move around in a shape that's pleasant and figure things out, accepting that as we touch something, the quality of heart that we touch it with is met and received by everything, and that thing touches us. I had a moment today, I was busy running around and I sort of went to the bathroom and sort of like slammed down the toilet seat a little bit. This moment was like, ah! You know, there are these moments in your life where you find yourself, you're kind of like running into a wall a little bit and setting down a glass too hard. And the moment of being like, oh, that has impact everywhere. It has impact with the way I speak with my friends and my children, that everything I do is just deeply and completely interconnected. I think meditation is a place where we start to remember this when we've forgotten. I know I'm talking about meditation a little bit as though we're messed up when we're not meditating, and then we start meditating and we realize we're messed up and we get better, and there's a big fallacy with that. But also I think there's quite a bit of truth. I think many of us have felt that, where there can be a moment of turning and copping to something we're not really willing to cop to at other times. And then with patience, I think really nursing with it, sitting with it, dwelling upon it, tracing the invisible mystery of it, and letting compassion come for your own chronic disorder. That there isn't a clear, you don't get the breathing technique that makes it all go away. I think maybe some traditions have more of that in it, and there's a lot of skillfulness in that. And in fact, we teach some of that with how we approach meditation here. But we don't rely upon that as the central turning key to unlock suffering into a different possibility of living. Rather, raw encounter and the crucible of your own chronic disorder, you have to go die to it. You have to go meet it and tell it you're not going to fix it, but you can listen. You can just stay with it. And really, in one sense, I think we all know this, that's how you talk to a lover, that's how you talk to a child, that's how you really attend to, the fullness of our meeting of other people. And that it's something we also do, it's a posture of our own heart that we enact in our own being as well as outside. And I think this patience is a place where that really turns, where we decide to stay with something without trying to fix it or grapple with it too much. And Hillman, so he's using this term here, chronic disorder. And I think what's interesting, if you look at this, the kind of first paragraph, he's a lot talking about your own suffering and chronic disorder. And then there's a transition where he gets a little bit mystical, right? He's going into the idols and altars, the creatures of nature, the tales, trusting our own imagination. And here, I think, actually, is a place for me where vigor and energy really comes into play. That there's this powerful turning point between patience and energy. And where within patience we might perceive that chronic disorder. We perceive a disorder. I think in energy, we find a threshold of mysterious and incalculable order. That we don't get a viewpoint where we can go into the messiness of our being and unwrap it all cleanly. We don't get to know all the vectors of our karmic circumstances and go in there with tweezers and tease it all out and put them in nice boxes. But what we do get is the opening of compassion for ourselves. We get the willingness to stay with things just as they are, messed up and opaque. And we can see, I think, a certain kind of energy and vigor arises when we know that that has an efficacy. We know that that does something, it unlocks something, but we don't get to know it in a way that we know what's going to happen. We don't get to solve it. We get to meet it and move with it and dance with it and feel certain kinds of unfoldings happen that are not the same as just putting things in tidy boxes. Rather, I think it's this kind of, this mystical communion he's talking to. That we move out of a place where we're like, okay, I'm just looking to what civilization's up to and what my community's up to, and sort of like navigate my life with that. Rather, I turn to the total complexity of my life and give it attention, nourish it, tease out where it's going, let it lead me somewhere, and find out that within that there's a powerful healing juice that can be unfolded. And for me, that often looks like that vigor and energy when I'm in a place that's more connected with that there's, there's like a slow burn of energy, that even when something looks opaque, I don't naturally jump back from it. But I say, oh, okay, maybe tonight I'm feeling like the world is unbearable in some sense. But then I ask, what's the quality of the unbearableness? Is it heavy and low to the earth? Or is it like my stomach just feels empty and I can't find anything that's, feels worthwhile to get my energy flowing? When you start asking the questions and you can stay with it, you can enter into the particularity of it. And then you find out that actually, this unbearable barrier, actually it's a mountain that I can like kind of climb up on. Or it's a flowing kind of emptiness in my being that is actually moving and shifting all the time. And so I think this patience opens up the terrain of all these things that we're usually just shut the door on, get the lid, and we put it back on top. The patience and vigor, they open up a new terrain. And then as for wisdom, I think a thorough trust of our delusion can appear. We don't have to insist that what is opaque, murky, and difficult transform into clarity, resolution, or ease for me to value it, for me to pay attention to it, for me to consider it worthwhile. And really you can see that's all us, that's all other beings. It is the substance of our living that usually we're just trying to handle it in a kind of way, But this is a place where we can trust and have faith in our mistakes and of the complexity of life, and know that is worthwhile terrain just as it is. Just as it is. So I think that deep trust and, conversation between wisdom and delusion is so important. And I came across a really beautiful kind of discussion about that. I'd like to read that for you now. There is no separation whatsoever of delusion and enlightenment. They are not strange bedfellows. On the contrary, they are working companions and need one another, with the shared purpose of actualizing salvic liberation, of salvation. At this point, I suggest readers view enlightenment as radiant light that illumines delusion far and wide, just as moonlight illumines the earth at night. The radiant light penetrates and unfolds the depths and dimensions of delusion, in brief, human nature and the human condition, that have hitherto been unnoticed, unknown, or unfathomed by practitioners, who in turn become aware of their own emotional, existential, and moral anguishes, doubts, and ambiguities. The illuminative and penetrating power of the radiant light can be explained from the perspective of Dogen's favorite statement: nothing in the whole world is ever concealed. This is not to say that light eradicates darkness, and as a result, all things hitherto hidden become plainly visible. The reason that originally nothing is hidden, and accordingly, light does not need to remove darkness. What light does then is to perpetually illumine and penetrate darkness's abysmal depths in the open-ended process of dialogue between light and darkness. This is the intimacy of light and darkness. With this in mind, perhaps we can better understand Dogen's following statement. When the Dharma does not yet completely fill your body-mind, you think that it is already sufficient. When the Dharma fills your body and mind, you know that something is missing. Paradoxically, the more deeply one grows in enlightenment, the more clearly one discerns one's own frailties and limitations. Expand your horizons from the personal to the social to the cosmic, and you will find yourself inextricably intertwined with all beings, all propelled by the vast and giddy karmic consciousness. We do not become deluded any more than we become enlightened, for we are originally deluded and originally enlightened. Isn't that energizing? I find it such a relief that I don't have to make myself a particular shape or hunt things down or get a hold of them and transform them. So that's what I have to offer tonight. And we have a few minutes left. If anyone has anything to share, any questions? Or anything that feels frustrating or stupid or wrong to you, what I just read or had to say at all.
James right in the first paragraph, the first chapter that we all read together. I had some of my notes. He wrote down something along the lines of disillusioned but not disheartened. And in my notes, I remember just like scribbling that really bigly and like circling it and underlining it. So it's somewhere in here. Those are the words that were moving through my head.
And say them again.
Disillusioned but not disheartened.
Do you remember if he's talking about like disillusioned with your own effort, or like disillusioned with what's being disillusioned? What illusions?
Isn't the chapter about wisdom? I think what I got from it, and I feel like I probably extracted the words from the I'm not certain that this is what he was saying. This might just be like my own interpretation, the way that my mind has held on to it. But deep felt, deep felt disillusionment, like deep uncertainty, the loss of your illusions, the loss of your believing to know anything at all, as the, I guess another way of describing wisdom.
That reminds me of some lines from the verses of Faith Mind, which we chant here in the morning, which I think Joshi and you have a particular affinity with right now. Where is it? Oh. Here it is. No, that's not it. One moment of reversing the light is greater than the previous emptiness. The previous emptiness is transformed. It was all a product of deluded views. No need to seek the real, just extinguish your views. Do not abide in dualistic views, take care not to seek after them. As soon as there is right and wrong, the mind is scattered and lost. The other part's not so. The second part I read, but the one moment of reversing the light is greater than the previous emptiness. Sitting around in discursive consciousness running through endlessly, you will just find that you'll want to settle on one after the other. And if you sit with that long enough, you realize none of them will really encapsulate it. You can see how that, endlessly disillusioning yourself. Or the quote from Dogen in the Genjo koan that, living beings are greatly deluded about realization, and Buddhas are greatly realized delusion. So that moment by moment, allowing the fullness of our view to come through, and then recognizing that will fall away moment by moment, and we'll never be able to encapsulate anything or stand on it as an absolute. So that brings us at time, and for just a little homework off the top of my head, I'm curious, if everyone watch for the place this week in your head and mind and heart, where you recognize that you're yearning for the clarity of something and ignoring what's opaque and appearing right in front of you. I think probably if you're interested in coming to this temple at all, there's often people practicing Zen or really seeking that clarity and simplicity. A comment often is people are like, I really like the aesthetic of Zen. It's so simple. Versus, Tibetan, it's so many images and colors, it's kind of loud. I just want the simple, clear thing. And there's a beautiful energy in that. I think the aesthetic draws something really important out, but also we can see where it's cutting up something that's already whole, that's already trying to teach us just as it's showing up. And, sitting on the cushion, you will inevitably run into this. So maybe if people kind of ruminate on that a bit and see where that's appearing for you. We might have some discussion and sharing around that next week, which will be our last class together. So, and maybe I'll come up with some more homework between now and the email I send. Yeah.
Can you restate the homework? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You said it so nicely the first time.
And then I diluted it all afterwards.
Well, no.
Yeah. Where find the place where you're yearning for a clarity over the opaqueness of something that's showing up just as it is. And what's that conversation in your being and heart? And there's no good or bad or right or wrong with this. It's not. Whatever's astringent in there is also what you need, right? It's also there. All right, thank you, everyone.